discussing the changes and the evolutions that we see around the world. So, this is our number one program for navigating how, despite the challenges, how can we position Dominica and our people to reap the benefits of this ever changing world? Because, as we know, change is the only constant. So, in this program, we look at our concerns about what is changing around us. We look at new approaches that we should consider adopting in various aspects of our life. What are the challenges and the opportunities that these changes are bringing? Because we all know that change can be so scary, but we also must keep in mind that there are certain benefits that often come with change. So we are always grateful that our experts at home and abroad stop by to help us to navigate these changes. And as we get ready to begin the program, we want to always keep in mind those who are in need of our prayers, and that includes Father Martin, as well as Mr. Julius Timothy, who were recently hospitalized, and anyone who's not in the best of health this evening. So we want to keep everyone in our prayers. We also want to pray for the families of the two men we allegedly heard committed suicide recently. We continue to pray for the vulnerable in our societies, Leader Kanisha Etienne, who is still missing, as well as Velma Valmont and Avanel Charles. We simply must not let their disappearances and their deaths be in vain, and we must work to continue to protect the vulnerable in our society. So again, welcome to Roots Connections on Q for today, Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. I am your host, Simone Mathieu, and we have another packed program for you. And the question we're asking is, when was the last time you went to the supermarket? Have you seen those prices rise? Right? So the question we're asking this evening is, as food and other prices continue to rise, how can we improve and maintain healthy eating habits and our general health? Because the other thing that we see rising are NCDs, non-communicable diseases such as cancer, diabetes, stroke. And we know that there is an important connection between eating healthy, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and these non communicable diseases, the NCDs. So, the question we are asking this evening is how, despite this rise in prices, we are still able to maintain and even improve our health to avoid these NCDs. So we have another great panel for you this evening. People who need no introduction, but we'll still have them say a couple of words as they join us this evening. We have from out of New Jersey, of course, they're all Dominicans, but living in New Jersey, we have Miss Halima Ahmed Thomas, and she is a registered nurse and the founder of Dominica Garden Club. In Dominica, we have Miss Jodi Dublin Dangleben. She wears many hats. She's the proprietor of Jodi's Naturals, but she is also the president of the Dominica Herb Association. So this evening, she will be joining us primarily in her role as the president of the Dominica Herb Association. And yet somebody else who needs no introduction. From Florida, we are joined by Mr. Cyril, Indigenous Bushman Browne, a herbalist, health educator, researcher, and the proprietor of Bushman Herbs and Things. So without any further ado, let us have them unmute their mics, greet the audience, and just tell us a little bit about what they do. So Cyril, since you're the only gentleman on the panel this evening, we'll have you go first.
Good evening, everyone. I am really stoked to be on Simone's show once again. It's been a while, Simone,
Yes, too
and
long.
it's always a pleasure, being part of your panel. It's really exciting, informative, and we got to keep it flowing. Anyway, I'm not gonna make this long. I am from St. Joseph. I was born and raised in St. Joseph, out of Dominica, and I live in Florida right now. I live in Florida. I'm an herbalist, as Simone says. Uh, I'm a holistic health educator, and I do a whole lot of research on medicine and herbs and the usage of herbs. Um, I started Bushman Herbs and Things in 2020, and it was kind of weird the way it started. I was navigating Facebook a lot, looking for herbalists and herbal education per se, and I came across a lot of folks who were not really jiving or meshing with what I was looking for, and that's when I made that move when I decided to just study, pick up some lessons, study, and just do my thing. But besides that, I'm a natural herbalist. That's something that's innate in me. So I just picked up the education from there and move it forward because I couldn't find what I was looking for. Okay, I wasn't satisfied with what I was seeing on social media, so I decided to make it happen my way.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
and
Yes.
then Bushman and Herb started. It's a weird story. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to touch on it a little bit.
Sure.
April 2020, when President Donald Trump, disbursed stimulus checks. I think it was about $1,200 per person, something
Hmm.
like that, and that's the money I used to start my business.
Good for you.
That's where it started. I got my LLC. I I started my education, formal education in herbalism with that money because that's money I didn't have,
Hmm.
before I got it. So I was gonna waste it all away. I got some equipment, I got material, and I was just studying. I went crazy studying because I knew what I wanted was so deep inside of me that I needed something to help push it out and just bring it out.
Hmm.
And that's where it all started, man. In simple terms.
Yeah, sounds good. Yes, thank you for sharing. Amma, let's come over to you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Everyone knows me as Amma Thomas on Facebook. I come from the village of Margaret. Most people know me as Halima. Thomas Abdullah. Long story with the last name. But I am from Margaret. I am a nurse in New Jersey. And about 2019, I moved to my house and I made a promise to myself prior to that that as soon as I got a house in the US, I would have a garden. So we started gardening, didn't know what I was doing. I used the basic knowledge I had from um, high school, and then I started researching. A couple people mentored me. I looked at a lot of videos online and I started doing a lot of research as to growing a garden. Somebody introduced me to the concept of regenerative agriculture, which is where my focus is. And as I started following Regen Agriculture School, the Soil Food Web School, doing a course with them right now. I got connected to people out there like Vananda Shiva, who are activists on a global level. And so they had a bigger story to tell, and it was not just food, but food as medicine.
Hmm.
And being in the medical field, all the bells started going off in my head. We were in the middle of a crisis with COVID, and I started using basic things for my patients, such as like simple orange juice, hot orange juice, cocktails. I mean, basic things like that I was doing during COVID because we're not allowed to prescribe as nurses. And I just started talking more to my patients about using like food as their medicine. And somewhere I believe in 2020, I decided to start Dominica Garden Club. So I believe this is our second year of having Dominica Garden Club. I was very nervous because I didn't know anything. But thankfully, a lot of women came on, gave their support, and now our membership is almost 800 there. So this has been quite the journey, and it's something I enjoy. And I am, like Bushman said, even Bushman coaches me a little bit. That's like my mentor. And I just want to know more about the connection between food and medicine. So basically, that's where I am right now.
Yeah, and if I can just make a quick observation, I noticed 2020 keeps coming up. So it's great to see that we took a tragedy and turned it into opportunities because I also started Push Past 10 in 2020. So it is great that we see that with all the downtime and the challenges we were facing at this time, the creative minds came together and decided to create opportunities during that time to benefit our people. Jody, over to you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks
Yeah,
for
you're
having
still
me.
very low, but let's see if we can hear you.
I'll try to talk really loudly. I hope that's better. Um, so my name is Jodi Dublin Dangleben, and I was recently elected the president of DHB. Um, so as a business owner, before I even became the president, I am the owner of JD's Naturals, where we use a lot of local herbs, not only herbs generally, but I try to use as much as possible our local herbs in my formulation. And so I've been an advocate in my business for the use of those herbs, even for our food, as medicine, and even as cosmetics, because we tend to think that it's only what we ingest that affects our health. But as you know, the skin is the largest organ, and so what we put on our skin and our hair is just as important as what we ingest internally. So I advocate a lot for using holistic wellness products that have no harmful chemicals in them, and just getting people to use what we have locally, what we grow, what we can eat, what we grow. We can make our products from what we grow, and so just living that lifestyle and advocating for such. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to this discussion tonight.
Yes, and I know you switched devices.
Yes.
So if you can try the headphone with that new device as well, maybe that will help with the audio because we really want to hear your contribution this evening. So let's all keep our mics muted as we begin the program. So again, thank you for being here for Roots Connections on Q. We are live on Facebook. We see that the folks on Facebook are already coming in. We have Anthony Simon. Good evening to you. Dorian, Dorival, Irma Williams. So come on in, share the live. We are live on Q95 FM radio as well as Push Past 10 on Facebook. And we are also live on Q95 FM radio on YouTube. So you will be able to make your contributions. And I know you will have a lot to say on this particular topic. So we're looking forward to your comments. We're looking forward to your phone calls as we continue the programs. Don't forget to like and share and click the notification button. And remember, for all the best in daily programming, head on over to Q95DA.com. Again, Q95DA.com for all the best in programming. And you can always also catch our last episode of Roots Connections on Q, where we talked about how the practice of law is evolving and changing and the benefits we may all realize from these changes. We remain grateful to Mr. G and the Q95 family for the opportunity to come here every second and fourth Wednesday to tap into our human resources to begin the process of reversing that brain drain that we have experienced in Dominica and the Caribbean region for decades. So now we can have our experts at home and abroad make contributions and thereby begin the process of reversing the brain drain that we have experienced. Again, we want to thank Lambi. Lambi, thank you for being here on the console, ready to take the phone calls. Showing Norris, our engineer, and of course, DJ Sean. So, as we continue to invest in us in 2023 and create those important strategic plans that we have set out this evening, again, we are looking at as food and other prices continue to rise, how can we improve and maintain healthy eating habits and our general health? So, guys, as we begin the conversation, let us just talk about your observations, some of those rising prices that you are seeing, because we know that you work very closely with food, with planting, with herbs. So let us just talk about some of the observations that you have made along the way. So Bushman, I know you may have to leave us early this evening, so let us begin with you again. You're muted.
All right. Think I'm live.
Yes, you're with
Okay.
us.
Thanks again. Um, you know, uh, I have to start with, COVID-19, the effects it had and still having um, on everything, food supply and demand, the food markets, and that took a toll on, on the fact that food prices, just got really high, higher than usual, higher than normal, and I believe that led to food insecurity and
Mhm.
poverty, in many developing countries and even countries that are emerging. You know, I believe there were also, and I believe we all could attest to the ongoing complications from COVID-19 pandemic and the supply chain disruptions as well. We all followed the news. We saw that food supply was really slow at certain times. At certain instances, it came to a bottleneck kind of situation where things were not moving, things were not being exchanged. And then what really put the nail in the coffin was that somewhere in the mid 2021, we saw a sudden spike in rising prices of goods and services. And that caused inflation to shift, not on the good side,
Mhm.
but shift on the bad side. And that had me in particular realizing that this is going to be a long haul. All right, a long haul and a very disconcerting experience, which might linger for quite some time, even becoming the norm.
Absolutely. Amma?
Well, prior to COVID, I had already started gardening, and um, like Bushman said, before that, I was always posting on Facebook, even before I came super health conscious, as to how to make a meal under $10. I was always trying to make meals under $5, under $10. I was even looking at some of the posts in preparation for this um, live, and I saw that I was making meals for under $5 for my family, and somewhere now I have to post under $10 for my family. That's about what it costs to make a meal, $10 to $15 for the family, depending on what you're cooking. So I had no clue about the rising prices because that summer I was gardening very intensely, and we were eating nearly everything from the garden. So I wasn't paying attention to the food prices. We just got the basic stuff from the store. And then and my partner was doing most of the shopping. So I wasn't aware. So then somewhere in the fall, when I had to go to the grocery store, for some stuff. I was like, no, this is not true. Everything has basically doubled. I mean, everything
Mhm.
is doubled. And I was like, what? I can't believe we're spending this much on food. I remember coming to America and my brother and I were in college in Ohio, and we both, our grocery budget was $50 every 2 weeks. And when I say $50, I mean we came out of there with a cart full of stuff. And we weren't looking for, like, it was a good supply of food. So when I look to where we are now, that's $50 every 2 weeks. Now my family spends $150 a week. And from what people are telling me, that 150 is on the very low end.
It
I
is.
talked to colleagues and they saying that it's more like $200-300 a week for
Mhm.
food. So that had me thinking, like, about the shortage. I'm like, how do you survive going forward? Like, what can we do to help ourselves, especially if you're in a place like Dominica and we have heavy importation of foods? How do we um, sustain our healthy supply of foods, and how do we maintain the lifestyle that we've become used to? And so this is why I'm so excited about this discussion, because I do think I can contribute a little bit, because this is something I have always been experimenting with for the longest while. So I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, well, I follow you on Facebook, Amma, so I know you will be able to share far more than just a little bit. So, Jodi, let's keep our fingers crossed that the audio is working. And I want you to tell us about your observations, but I also want you to tell us about the Dominica Herb Association for those of us who are less familiar with
Mhm.
that association. What is it? What does it do? So, just kind of tell us a little bit more about the association.
Sure. You can hear me perfectly now?
Excellent. Yay.
So the Dominica Herbal Association, Business Association, was formalized in 2006. It came off from a Caribbean Herbal Association conference, and the individual islands were sort of encouraged to form their own island associations. I think and Dominica was maybe one of the only ones who up to this day still have the association running. So we're very proud of that. But one of the main things that we do is to get people who use herbs, who have businesses, especially using our local herbs, to come together to form associations so that we can advocate for one another as a collective. And a key component of the association is our flagship store. So I'm sure you've heard of Zeb Quayle.
Mhm.
It's a store where we promote different businesses that use our traditional herbs as medicine, in cosmetic products as well. And we have gone a little further from that, and we're also introducing locally made products in our store. So once you come to the store, you know that everything on the shelf is locally made. So it's a way to kind of get us together. It helps as well when the diaspora come down and they only want local stuff, to sort of expose them to the different products that we have in Dominica, especially those geared towards, health and wellness and a holistic way of life. So that's what essentially the Herbal Association does. We're also looking to get equipment for those businesses that deal with herbs, so we can have like one space where we can dry our herbs, where we can crush and manufacture and produce our products from these herbs. So we're just advocating for that and helping our businesses to sort of grow in the herbal industry. I think more than ever, herbs have always been a way of life in Dominica, and now we just want to formalize that to get all our herbs, have scientific data on our different herbs here in Dominica, and sort of encapsulate that so that the future generations can know how to use these herbs and how they benefit all the different issues that we may have with our health.
Yeah, and I think this is a great place to start the conversation, Jodi and everyone, because in my mind, I'm thinking Dominica is supposed to be the nature island of the Caribbean. Some people say the nature island of the world. So I'm just thinking the Herbal Association is off to a great start with regards to promoting the herb. But why isn't this a major industry? Why isn't the herbs that we're producing in Dominica in abundance? Why hasn't this become a major industry where we are not just selling these products locally, but we're exporting it to the world? Any thoughts on that, anyone?
Well, I think I know a couple people who've been trying to open up logistic channels from Dominica to the US. And one of the hurdles that this particular individual have been facing is that there is no like contract or agreement between our government and the United States as to a process by which things can be manufactured under a set standard and be imported into the US from Dominica. So I know that is a limitation. There's certain other limitations and hurdles that they have on our products in Dominica, that there needs to be more aggressive negotiation between, say, Ministry of Agriculture and the U.S. Department of Agriculture on clearing our goods through the customs logistic channel. So I think that's the biggest hurdle for Dominicans. The other one is shipping. You know, there's not enough volume to get into contracts. So like like tropical shipping comes down, they bring in all these barrels with import that that's like really funny. They
Mhm.
bring in all these barrels with all these canned goods that are not good for the population, and then there's nothing to take back, you know. So it's like one way trade. There's no real export channels for us from Dominica. So
Ye-
that's something that we can look at improving through maybe cooperatives coming together and letting the people know that these are things that they can do for themselves. I think most times what I'm getting from Dominica, the feedback I'm getting is like everybody is dependent on government to do some work for them. But I think if you have a cooperative and if you have a writer that can say, put the laws or whatever needs to be done in place and then approach the Ministry of Agriculture and say, hey, this is a bill we need you to pass for us to get this done, I think it's easier for them to look at the proposal and then make it happen versus having to do everything from scratch.
mhm.
I don't think we understand that capitalism and the way it has worked and benefited the American society is that the onus has always been on the private sector. We tend to think that it is the government driving America, but the government does nothing but just facilitate. The government doesn't run Wall Street. The government doesn't run businesses. We pay taxes to government, and they develop infrastructure and facilitate capitalism, but they're not necessarily the drivers of the economy. So I think that is where we need a little bit more education, that we can do those things for ourselves. We can come together in co-ops. We can put those proposals together. We can lobby. We need to develop a culture of lobbying instead of complaining. What can we do to help Jodi with Dominica Herb Association? We are the herbalists, can we get them together? How much volume? Like she's saying, where's the scientific data that would enable us to have tangible, like real life hard statistics that could point us in that direction, versus saying, oh, I want to get my product on the US market. Well, you're only making 25 packets of peppermint tea. So, I mean, like, there's not enough volume to have a ship stop in Dominica for that.
Mhm.
So I guess that's where the conversation needs to go.
Yeah,
How do we
and I
stimulate?
completely agree with you. But we will also talk a little bit later about some national policies that need to be in place to facilitate a lot of what we're talking about. And Bushman, I'm going to come to you because I know that you import some of your herbs as well. So I'm just wondering if there's even a potential for a collaboration with the Dominica Herb Association. But Jodi, let me come to you, and let me ask you: is that something that is in consideration? Is the Herbal Association thinking of going national, international, beyond Dominica? Is that something that is being considered?
Yes, definitely. So, even starting with the equipment that we got from a grant funding, it allows us now to process in bulk. But yes, volume is an issue. We have had discussions where we decided to come together and everyone would sort of schedule their shipment around the same time, produce around the same time so that we can get our products out. But the shipping costs are ridiculously exorbitant. And sometimes a lot of the businesses cannot foot that bill. So that's where the shipping comes in again. So even if we have the volume, the cost of shipping out of Dominica are it's
Yeah.
it's just unfathomable. I mean, we have to. We are running a business after all. We'd like to share, our herbal knowledge with the world, but in the end, if we don't make a profit, then. So I
Mhm.
think we really need to look at that, and maybe that's where, as Emma said, the lobbying comes into place. That's where the association comes into place, where we can talk on behalf of our members as a collective. As well, even the retail shipping. Just 2 weeks ago, through my business, I ship out through DHL, and the shipping costs are so high for retail. So even within our retail businesses, it's only a few businesses that actually have that demand can actually go that route through shipping through FedEx and DHL. So it's something that we have to work on, and we really have to engage the heads that be to sort of find a way to facilitate us through getting um, shipping that is affordable for our businesses.
Yeah,
I have
absolutely.
a
And let
question.
me, yeah, I'm coming to you in a minute. And let me
Mm.
just chime in because that is why I continue to say we have all the pieces. We just have to put them
Mhm,
together.
mhm,
Because
mhm.
I'm sure, Jodi, you're familiar. I think your products are on buydominicaonline.com,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
think of it. She is already shipping stuff from Dominica. She's already
Mhm,
receiving shipments from Dominica. So this is where I think a national policy can come into play, where we have something in place to reduce the shipping cost for bulk
mhm.
shipping. We have the producers grow more of the product,
Yeah.
decide the date for shipping. You see what I'm saying? So we can all line this up. But something else Amma's response kind of reminded me of as well is the need for FDA regulations. Because once you decide you're going to ship food into the US, they take that very seriously. So what are the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, for those who are less familiar, what are those regulations here in the US? And there must be something similar in Canada, maybe in the UK, that we need to look at to ensure that our producers in Dominica can meet those standards. So I think it is all possible if we have a strategic plan. That's why we always talk about strategic action plans on this program, that we have a strategic plan. What needs to be done? What can be done? How can the government assist? How can the private sector assist so that we can get this going? Because that is a major industry. The wellness industry is a $1 billion industry. So why are we as Dominicans, we have not gotten a major piece of that pie? And so this evening we are saying it is possible, but there is some work that needs to be done. So Amma, let me come back to you, and then Bushman, I haven't forgotten you. I'm coming right back to you.
I had a question for Jody. Is it possible to ship out of a Caribbean country that probably does bulk? Like, so can you send to like St. Lucia and
Yeah.
then you ship out of St. Lucia because it's cheaper?
Yeah. So actually, I have considered that, well, individually as for my business, because there's a boat that travels to most of the Caribbean countries. So I am thinking of sending to St. Thomas and then from there sending to the States. So it would be cheaper to do that. And yes, we can send to St. Lucia. So the boat actually goes to St. Lucia and other Caribbean countries, Barbados, even Trinidad. So that is something we can look at. I think
Mm.
there's one person who does it from Trinidad actually. They send in bulk to Trinidad and then from there they send to the United States.
Yeah, and that's a great suggestion. Bushman, let me come over to you for your thoughts.
Yeah, certainly. Recently, as recent as last November until this day, I've made 2 trips to Dominica. 2 trips, and just to expound on what Jodi and Emma said, um, they their part of the conversation is more on a macro level, okay, and it's a daunting task.
Mhm.
But what I did on my last 2 recent trips was try working this on a micro level, okay. Work with some of the farmers on the ground, farmers that I know, and farmers that I met, while I was down there, trying to get produce herbs, specifically herbs. Um, Herbs like carpenter bush and damiana. We have a lot of damiana at home, and we have puev, and those are herbs that are very very good for our overall health. So I spoke to some farmers, and we're trying to get, again on a micro level, nothing huge for starters, and that in itself was a challenge. So I understand where Emma is coming from, and I understand where Jodi is coming from, and their frustration. And I don't want to say it was disheartening, but it was kind of surprising to me knowing that Dominica has like every herb that we need, you know, for our health. Every single herb for everything, for every ailment, every disease, in that it's a struggle. It really is a struggle to get it out of Dominica, all right, to bring it where it's needed. Okay, and it was challenging just trying to get some of the farmers to understand the need, the need for those herbs overseas, whether it's in America, in London, or in Canada. Okay, there is a need for those herbs, and then we have to, herbalists like me have to source our herbs, most of our herbs, from companies here.
Hmm.
Okay, companies here. When Dominica, we have all these herbs just sitting, everything's growing wild, and no one's really, or no one that I know is really paying attention to this. To have, say, we need a half an acre of land, just for carpenter bush. We need 2 acres of burdock root, and we need to start looking at it in that direction, in that perspective. Okay, instead of each person having a little garden, that's understandable. That's for your own, personal use. But how about herbalists who need those herbs to help, clients get well? And I had that conversation with a few of my farmer friends back home. Like, look, you have to start thinking about it that way. And you have to start, or you should start, putting it into action, putting that plan into action. Reserve some land for sime comptoir. Just, you have a whole plot of land just for sime comptoir, another plot of land for lemongrass, you know, and those herbs, they don't really need a lot of care. Really, they don't. just to make sure that everything's going good. And so on the micro scale, it's difficult, let alone on the macro scale. I could just imagine the enormous effort that needs to be put in place for that to really happen, and then for marketing and everything else, transportation, production to happen. It is a task, and I believe it requires partnership from our people down in Dominica and us here overseas, wherever we are. We have to form coalitions, we have to form partnerships. And one of the biggest factors I believe that has to play out in this is trust. Trust. We have to trust each other, and we have to build mutual understanding and cooperation between uh, people in Dominica and the Dominicans who live abroad. We have to really start there. It's a lot of work, guys, because I've been on the ground and I talked to a lot of people. I didn't even have a car in Dominica. I was riding the bus, just talking to people and just getting information. And we need more cooperation. We are united, we're just not together. And I think that that has a lot to play into the fact that we are not actually on top of our game as far as the herbal market is concerned.
Mhm. Yes, I completely agree with you that it can seem like a daunting task, but everything begins with a plan. And I think that we're already creating a plan, even from this conversation, because now, thanks to Amma just sharing with Jody, we know, and I know Jody already knows this because she's very business savvy. She has her products just about every island and region of the world, right, Jody? So just knowing the idea that maybe it is not possible to ship from Dominica to the US, Canada, the UK, but bulk shipping to the other islands. And then the other thing that comes to mind is that I think that people will be more interested in agriculture when we show the markets. So, if through the Herbal Association, Jody and her team are able to show these young people, look at the market out there, look at how much you can earn based on what Bushman is telling us, these herbs are less labor intensive because we always hear, oh, young people don't want to do agriculture, it's too backbreaking in the hot sun. But if we're telling them, look at the market, look at how much you will earn, and these are products, these are produce that are not going to require as much effort as maybe growing bananas because we have to diversify. We've been talking about the diversifying since I was in high school in the 90s, but we have to diversify. We have to look at maybe other crops that take less effort, produce in abundance. We're able to use the Dominica Herb Association, ship it to another country while our government work on reducing the shipping prices for us, and then take it to the international markets. It sounds like we've already created a strategic plan. What do you guys think? Amma? Jody?
You're also
Hi.
correct.
So you are right. When we look at diversification, we also have to look at taking one thing and looking at the maximum potential for it. In preparing for this live, one of the things I did was look at things that can help us sustain ourselves, even if we were never to export one thing. And it was interesting because the first thing that came up was the coconut tree. And the coconut tree, I believe, is on our coat of arms. So it's very, important to us in terms of our economy and our livelihood. When you look at the coconut tree, you can use the trunk for a canoe. You can use the broom. You can get leaves for weaving. You can use the husk for fire. You can use the shell to make activated charcoal for cleansing. You can use the shell for kitchen utensils. You can use the food inside of the coconut for oils. Jody does that. Raw food, milk, skin products. You use the water for electrolyte balance and hydration. And this is like one of the purest forms of water, which is like so good for us in terms of our health. We can have healthy desserts, our coconut cheese, confit, patty cocoa, and then the medicinal value of the coconut oil as an antibacterial, antifungal, even for women for like vaginal yeast infection and diaper rash. You can use coconut oil for that, and for athlete's foot and ringworm. So when I researched all of that, I was like, whoa, just the coconut tree does that for us. So the potential to be self sustainable, this tree alone has such vast medicinal value and benefit, and it's readily available to us at almost zero cost. It is worth our while to look at how do we harvest and make use of it.
Absolutely. I was going to go back to Jodi for her thoughts, but I think she is. Hey, Jodi, you're here? Yes, you wanted to say something? Let's see if we have Jodi. Jodi, you're back? You're muted.
Yes.
Yes, I think you were going to make a comment.
No. It just cut off, so I just put it back on.
Okay, no
Sorry
worries.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so for anyone who joined us late, we're making two observations this evening. We're looking at how food prices are continuing, and everything else are continuing to rise. The prices are continuing to rise. But the other thing that we're seeing rising as well. I keep twisting my words, rising as well. NCDs. So we're talking about cancer. We're talking about diabetes. We're talking about stroke. So I'm happy that we have Amma with us this evening. She's a registered nurse. So can you just tell us a little bit more about these NCDs that we keep hearing on the rise, and the connection between what we consume and these NCDs?
Do you have time for your life?
We have
I will
some.
just focus on two that are my biggest pet peeve: cancer and diabetes. Bushman and I talk a lot about this together through our phone calls. This cancer thing, it drives me crazy. I think in Marigot we just had two very young ladies dying of cancer, and it broke my heart. I even put out something live that said, if anyone is dealing with cancer, please call me. I am willing to help and coach you for like no money. It probably even help you with some products, and Bushman can join with his part of how his herbs come in. But in the hospitals that I am working in, this is not just a Dominica issue. This is a worldwide issue. I belong to a cancer group for Kenya, and I'm telling you, the statistics in Kenya are mind blowing. On my unit in the hospital, we have so many hospice cases coming in, patients at end of life that are coming in just to die. And I'm not talking about granny in her 80s and 90s or even 70s. I am talking about people that are my age. There's no racial discrimination with cancer. Everybody is being affected by it. And again, going back to the cause of cancer, we're looking at our food sources. So, for example, I did a live where I talked about I went home, I was purchasing a piece of land. I met the people in December of the prior year. I asked them to make sure that no matter what happened, do not put any glyphosate gramazone on the land. After I purchased the land and I went there, some young men that were planting on the land had sprayed like almost one third of an acre with glyphosate. And I just hit the roof because I have been telling people one of the biggest causes of cancer in Dominica comes from soil contamination. The chemicals that we're using in the soil, the herbicides, the pesticides, the fungicides, we don't need this. Our soil has all the nutrients that we need. If you did a soil test, you would see that our soil has such heavy nutritional component. What you need in farming when you farm, if you follow regenerative agriculture practices, you need healthy fungi and bacteria. So if you see your plants with molds, if you see things not going the way you want them, it is because the soil doesn't have that balance in the microbiome. So that's where cancer is coming from. um and that's just one, a couple of the places. And this thing destroys what we call our mitochondria. Another thing that I've been looking at recently is magnesium deficiency. Worldwide, we're dealing with an issue of magnesium deficiency. That is the major trigger for mitochondrial dysfunction, which is the cell that makes our energy, the cell that processes the glucose is the mitochondria. And when this thing becomes dysfunctional, this is the origin of cancer. And there's this big debate going on in the world, and the conventional medical doctors do not want to agree that this is the source of cancer. And we see ourselves going for stuff like chemo and radiation when you can use the herbs, you can use your food to cure your cancer. We just need the knowledge on that. And we can come back and do another live on that, Simone. But these two things, including diabetes, which also the magnesium deficiency drives diabetes, because of course the same mitochondria is what is responsible for metabolizing your glucose in your body. So they're both related. The cancer and the diabetes, these are heavily related. But the cancer is my number one pet peeve, because I think we got to do something about this in Dominica. And the biggest thing I can advise people on this show to do: one, throw away all those canned goods, throw away those packaged foods. Go down by, I think it's Mr. George, there's a seed store there in Roseau. Get some seeds and start planting your own food. This is how our people, our ancestors, people like Mapampo, this is how they lived to be 100, disease free. We have all that it takes in Dominica to be healthy, and we're seeing ourselves with non-communicable diseases that we can cure. We literally can cure these things with food. And I know Jodi is a chemist there, and Bushman can come in to supplement on the information that I didn't discuss. But we really got to start going back to the basics, throwing away those packaged foods, because inside those foods are such terrible chemicals. If we had to read the labels, we'd never eat any of them. Anyway, so that's
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you're making some excellent points, Amma, because the way we eat at my house is we have this policy. If my grandparents would not recognize this food, we're not gonna eat it, right? So my grandparents would not recognize anything in a can. My grandparents would never recognize anything that is overly processed. My grandparents would recognize beans and whole grains. So it makes it easier for people to understand, because I think a lot of times people get confused about what they should and should not eat. Anything that your grandparents would not recognize, you should either reduce or eliminate the consumption of those produce. And I'm one for moderation, so I'm not one to say you have to completely eliminate. I know, Amma, you're a radical, you like throw it out, but I'm one for more of moderation, because I think sometimes being extreme can backfire. So I say limit, maybe make it 10%, 5% of your meal options, but that other 95% of your meal options should be the stuff that your grandparents can recognize, so that you know that you're making healthy choices to potentially live to a ripe old age of 100. But Bushman, I want to come to you for your observations. And then Jodi, I want to come to you because I want us to talk about a very important point you raised before, about it is not just the food, but the products we use in our hair, the products we use on our skin. And I also want us to not forget that when we talk about what we consume, we're also talking about the drinks, the alcoholic drinks, the smoking. So, how does that all tie in to what we're eating? Because I think we would all agree that when we're stressed, we are likely to make poor food choices, right? So now we have the increasing rates of healthy prices on healthy food. We have stress, which is causing us to eat poorly. And now we have the connection between eating poorly, consuming the wrong stuff, putting the wrong products in our hair and our skin. And now we're seeing the rise in these NCDs because there is a linkage between what we consume, what we put on our skin and in our hair. There was a recent case that just found that the relaxers we were all using back in the 80s, the 90s, there's a connection between those relaxers and cancer. So the evidence is there that what we consume, what we put on our skin, what we put in our hair, there is a connection to this rising NCD. So how do we navigate all of this to ensure that we're still living a healthy lifestyle? But Bushman, I want to come to you as well in terms of, eating healthy and what are your recommendations?
Certainly. I mean, I think first, in my studies and my research, education, I believe first we need awareness. And, it's out there. Information is out there, but I still believe a lot of people don't understand the severity of eating those foods and the danger that they put their bodies through and their cells and their organs. I think people don't understand that. So we need awareness, and then that should be followed by education. Once that they are made aware, right? Then we educate them, and that's why I really really love having consultations with my clients. I like I like to speak to people. I like to talk with people and help them understand what they're getting into, where they are, and where they need to be. Okay, so eating, folks, this is serious. All right, I'm not joking. I wasn't always this healthy spring chicken dude you see right before you. Okay, I was not always a healthy person, but I had to work my way up after being aware of what was happening to me. Then I educated myself. All right, and then I put that into action. So now I'm here. So eating healthy should be a lifestyle. It should be a lifestyle. It should not be something that you treat like you treat your shoes or you treat your clothes. Okay, you use it and you throw it away and then you get another one. Okay, and some people really treat their possessions better than they treat their bodies. And one thing I always teach is that you get one body. You get one body to work with. Treat that body right. You have one responsibility under your belt is to take care of that body that you possess. That's your home, that's your house, that's your domain. You take care of it. Your maker put you in charge of that body. Your body is not my responsibility. I can help you get that body right, but it's your responsibility. All right, we get one. Each person get one body. After that, that's it. You don't get a second one. Okay, so your very existence depends on consuming nutritious foods constantly. That way, the body could be nourished and to provide cells and the brain with enough oxygen. We need oxygen. Your brain has to have oxygen, and your brain has to have glucose from foods to have your brain going. Okay. So what happens is when you consume processed and overly processed foods, okay, what you're doing is you're lowering your levels of oxygen that goes to your brain and your cells and your body tissues. Okay. And it's called hypoxia. And that can cause symptoms like confusion, restlessness, difficulty breathing, rapid heart rate, and bluish skin. You see your skin start turning blue. You're running out of oxygen. Your oxygen is low. You don't want that. You want to have a very high oxygen level. Okay. And some chronic diseases like heart problems and lung conditions can really put you at risk for hypoxia. Okay, so healthy eating, guys. Healthy. I'm talking about plant-based. Okay, plant-based. People constantly tell me, oh, because when I direct some people to focus on detoxifying the liver and help them understand the importance of the liver, the functions of the liver in the body and the way it helps the body. And one of the first things I tell them is to stop eating animal flesh. Stop eating processed animal flesh. Because eating healthy all the time is going to help you live longer. Now, there are people who are living long that are not well, but that's not what I'm talking about. My conversation is about living a longer, healthier life. You understand?
Mhm.
Eating healthy keeps your skin looking good, your teeth looking good, your eyes healthy. It supports your muscles, it boosts your immunity, it strengthens your bones, and you need those. You need muscles, you need strong muscles, you need strong bones. It lowers your risk of heart disease and cancer. And as Emma was saying, cancer, guys, it's not that difficult to. I'm in a meeting. It's not that difficult to correct once you catch it early enough. Okay, if you catch it early enough, it's not that difficult. But people panic. They hear the word cancer and they go crazy and stuff, right? Uh, so we need awareness first of all, and then to educate people. And hopefully people catch on because we have to catch on to this. Since I was a little boy, growing up, my mom gave us herbal teas every morning and every night before bed. And you know what she would do? She would give us soursop tea every night. And we never knew why until we grew up that she was giving us the soursop bush tea in the night so we could get a better night's sleep. And if you guys follow me, you know that I'm huge on four things, four basic principles: restorative sleep, managing stress, good nutrition, and exercise.
Mhm.
If you could manage those four things, I will keep saying that for as long as I can talk to you. I will keep telling you these four things. If you are able to manage them, you can live a really long, healthy life.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bushman. Jody, let me come to you because I think it was so important. And we are going to take your calls. The time is speeding along as always, but we're going to take your calls in just a little bit. And I will also be taking the Facebook comments. But Jody, let me come to you. The importance of the skincare, the hair care
Yep.
products that we are applying to our bodies.
Yes. So every time we think of healthy eating, we totally forget about what we put on our skin, what we use to cream ourselves. And us black people will love to lather down ourselves with cream. We have to make sure those elbows and talons not white.
Blame our mothers.
So, we when we think of health, we tend to just focus on what we ingest. But we have to remember our skin as well is a living, breathing organ. It's tissues and blood vessels all wrapped up under there. And whatever we put on our skin can get into our bloodstream really easily, sometimes even faster than when we ingest food. So it's really important that we look at what we use for our, everybody wants to look nice and pretty, especially as women, who use makeup, who use creams. And sometimes we might read the labels of what we eat and we might totally forget to watch the ingredient list of our creams and so on. So maybe when we do that, if we want to really be healthy, we have to look at what we use on our skin, and look for options that are organic. So they would be labeled, obviously, on the bottles. Look for organic cosmetics. Look for cruelty-free. So these key terms: green, eco beauty, natural. You might see cruelty-free when they don't test on animals, or you might see eco-cert ingredients where all the ingredients in the product are eco certified, meaning that they're organic and natural. So I think we should start reading our labels and being more aware of what we use on our skin and our hair. So there are a few common toxic ingredients that we can look for. So when we think about harmful ingredients in cosmetic products, in hair care, sulfates is one of the main ones that have been linked to cancer. They are common carcinogens. And sulfates are usually what we call surfactants. So anything that lathers, if we have a face wash, if we have shampoo, anything that lathers, the first ingredient would be aqua, water, and the second one would be some sort of sulfate all the time. So we have to look for, maybe familiarize ourselves with the different names, scientific names of those ingredients, and know what to look out for. So like sodium lauryl sulfate, even in toothpaste, you find that in toothpaste as well, shampoos, some creams. You might also see parabens. So parabens have been linked to cancer. They're carcinogens as well. And a lot of research in women with breast cancer, when they actually did biopsies on the breast tissue, found parabens in there. So it's very important what we use and how what we put on our skin can eventually lead to even cancer and some other illnesses. And so we just have to be very aware. Another one that we should look for are fragrances. So you will see all the scientific names of all the different ingredients, but then you'll just see fragrance. And that is a way sometimes of not disclosing what is in the fragrance. And in those fragrances have all sorts of chemicals in there. You have heavy metals, you have petroleum, even in the synthetic dyes, so heavily colored cosmetics. Be wary of them because there are not many natural colorants that can be used, and a lot of them have synthetic dyes. When you see FD and C blue or red number this and blue number this, look for those things in your ingredients and stay away from them. And so you can get alternatives like JD's Naturals, of course, where we tend to use a lot of organic, natural herbs, even our key ingredients like emulsifiers and those things. Most of them are coconut derived. And Emma spoke about the coconut plants. And even in natural organic formulation, most of those things are derived from coconuts. Even my surfactants, the stuff that is used to make the chim or to lather, is derived from coconuts. So, I mean, there's so much that we can do, and we can even look at those things when it comes to manufacturing and adding value to our agricultural products. Make products that can be used in cosmetics. So I could go on and on.
Yes,
That's
thank
my
you.
passion, but that's for another show. But yeah,
Yeah.
just to impress on people that we need to really look at what we put on our skin and our hair, even makeup. There are a lot of different eye issues that can arise from wearing mascaras and lipsticks. Lipsticks have a lot of formaldehyde in them. So we have to be wary of what we use. Hair
Yeah,
gel, all those things, yeah.
yeah, and I'm really happy you're sharing specific information, Jodi, what to look for when we look at the back of that container. And of course, if anybody has missed any portion of the program, keep in mind that this program is going to be on Facebook, not just this evening, but as long as Facebook exists, and we have a Q95 FM radio account on Facebook and YouTube and Push Past 10. So you can always go back and catch the beginning of the program or catch any aspect of the program. So you can say, what did Jodi say again? Okay, let me go back and look at that video so I can be reminded of what each member of the panel said. So Lambi, let me come over to you so we can open the mics and invite our callers to call in, open the phone lines.
Good evening. You are listening and viewing Roots Connection on Q. The numbers to contact us here are as follow: 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. These are all local numbers. The international number is 305-432-9624. Let me run these one more time. The numbers are 449-3095-9697, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Back to you, Simone.
Yes, thank you. And I just want us to keep in mind how serious we are about improving our health and the need for to be more proactive in that area, because I'm now receiving a message from Mr. G, the CEO of Q95 FM, and he said to us, I am considering facilitating a Herbal Business Association radio show on Tuesday or Wednesday afternoons from 4 to 5 p.m. to educate, inform, and promote your products, Jodi, and everybody else who has a product available to Dominica and the region and the world at large. If they're interested, it will be of no cost to you. So I think that is a great opportunity. And Jodi, he is also interested in knowing if you would like to be the host. So what I will do, I will pass you on to Mr. G so you can have that discussion. You can take a couple of minutes to think about it, because we think it is very important, because without our health, what do we have?
Exactly.
Without our health, what do we have? Because we can have everything else in the world, but if we're not healthy, there's no way we can enjoy anything in the world. So very important. So kind of just think about it, Jodi, and with your permission, I'd like to forward your contact number to Mr. G, if that is okay with you.
Very much so. It's very
Yes,
much.
so you can have that discussion, and hopefully we can get that program going, and we can have Ama back, we can have Bushman back, and we can continue the conversation even beyond today. So let's take a look at what's going on Facebook. Irma Williams says Dominica needs Jesus intervention. Well, that is true, but we can also help ourselves, because I like the way Ama thinks that sometimes we look around for the external help when we can do it ourselves. We can put the pieces of the puzzle together and do it ourselves. So I think we've already shared some wonderful ideas and suggestions this evening. Let's see who else we have. Alvin Thomas, great to see you. He says, good evening, Simone. And to your guest, Alvin, it is always great to have you. Yes, we fixed that problem with Jodi, so thank you for letting us know. Anthony Simon, great to see you. Glenda Shillingford, good evening, Simone and guest. Thank you, Glenda, for being here as always. Owen Prosper, great to see you. Good evening, Patriotic Family. I'm Locked, great to see you as always. Owen, let's see who else we have. Tina Bell, nice to see you. Good evening. So let's see who else. Ernest Letar, great program. Thank you, Ernest. Good to see you. Alvin Thomas says, great conversation and ideas from the panel. Glenda, too much preservations in foods to keep them good, but bad for us. Good points, Glenda. Alvin, Jodi, how do you know whether some of these so-called organics are not fake and marketing stunt. Are we able to determine? So I think that is a very good question. So let's take a pause right there. And Jodi, if you want to make a comment on that question.
Sure. So, like I said, with the fragrance, so some of them might claim to be natural and organic, and then you see fragrance stuck in there where all the chemicals are. So, you have to have an idea of what to look for. When it comes to the US market, it's difficult to actually have those false claims because they have really stringent testing when it comes to cosmetics. So, maybe in the Caribbean, you might get a few, claims that may not be true. If they say they're organic, they might not be fully or 100% natural. Um, yeah, but if you buy a product from the States, then most likely if it says it's 100% organic or it's eco-cert, then most likely it is because of all the testing that they have to do to actually get it on the market. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent point. Glenda is moi-même bien boaché. Glenda is a good thing I can read Creole. So she's locked on. Denise Fritz, good evening. My mom, Medina Senos, good evening. She's standing right in front of me here at home. Nice to see you, Mom, on the Facebook Live. Yes, so guys, let's get back into the discussion because I think something else we have to keep in mind is that we cannot have this conversation about rising food and all prices of everything without considering the overarching factors. So, where is the protection? We're supposed to have, for example, a Dominica protection, consumer protection agencies. What about national policies in terms of regulating those prices? Because, yes, there is inflation. Undoubtedly, there is inflation. But should, for example, supermarket owners just be able to arbitrarily just increase their prices? Where is the regulation? So let us talk about this conversation in a broader context in terms of the regulation that is needed, the advocacy, the protection that is needed for consumers as we see these prices rising. So anyone have any thoughts on that? Ama?
Um, so I was in Dominica in December and I bought tomatoes because I needed tomatoes and they were $8 a pound. Now, mark you, even in the US, if you were to convert the $8 back into US dollars, I do not pay that amount for a pound of tomatoes. And I am not saying that I am ungrateful for the farmers or the hard work that they put in, but you are right. Like $8 for a pound of tomato is like it's over the top. So I got the tomatoes home, and this is how I believe if the government and if there's no policies, if we have to deal with what we have, which to me is the most practical way right now because we do not see it happening. There are no policies and bills and legislation that needs to be passed in parliament. It's not happening. So let's deal with what we have and what we can control. So a
Mm-hmm.
farmer is selling me a pound of tomatoes for $8 a pound. I buy it because I need it at the time. I take home my tomatoes, and every single tomato, I counted them, has 100 and more seeds in it. And so I took one tomato and I filtered it out and I left it for my mom. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to plant these. I planted the tomatoes, I think it was Boxing Day. I left Dominica on January 7th or 8th, and tomato seedlings were in full blown effect. And my mom and I were talking, and she kept saying, oh, your tomato trees are growing so much, I don't know what to do with them. And I wasn't paying attention until she sent me a picture that showed they were up to the fence. And I was amazed at the miracle of one tomato. And that is how we can then come back now to control the prices because now my mom now has tomatoes in her garden. So guess what she's not doing? She's not buying tomatoes anymore. And her surplus, she can now take to the market and sell for maybe $4 a pound if she wants to have a social economic impact and say, hey, this is outrageous. Tomato shouldn't be that much. I'm going to sell my tomato at $4 a pound and then encourage other farmers to do the same. So I think that's where we as the consumers can
Mhm.
have some power over how prices happen. Nobody is forcing us to go into any supermarket and buy anything at any price that we see in the store. I see imported goods in Dominica, like a box of cornflakes for 40 something dollars. Do you need that? Do you really need to give that to your child? Inside of those cornflakes are pesticides, glyphosate, all kinds of chemicals that are carcinogenic. So, like Bushman was saying, if you are aware and then you're educated, and like Jodi pointed out, know how to read your labels, you're like, I don't need this. I am going to go home and I am going to make, for example, a plantain porridge with some nice coconut, some spices, and get my children used to that from an early age. So I think that's where price control can happen. That's how you, the consumer, can manage prices in Dominica. There are certain things we have no choice. But when you look at the availability of raw material in Dominica, the availability of what we have at our disposal, it is very easy to make, I would say, a good 75% of our needs. We should be able to home grow them from oils with coconut oil, avocado oil. We can make that for ourselves. We can grow chickens for ourselves. We can have our own eggs. We can have our own beans, our potatoes. There's a lot of stuff we can grow. The stuff we cannot grow, we don't necessarily need it because we are a living example. We, the Gen Xers, are an example of how we grew up on natural, almost 100% organic, and we thrived, and our brain worked at fantastic levels to where we left and we became so successful in the outside world. So
Yeah,
when you look at,
Amma, give me 1 second. We have a phone call coming in. I don't want them to hold on for
yeah,
too
go
long, but
ahead.
I'll come right back to you.
Caller, please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead with your call.
Hello? I'm calling from the Bronx.
Yes,
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I just want to thank the panel for you have a good program.
Thank you.
Maybe I might know them or not, but it's a very good program. And I would really like to share or learn something. I mean, you're never too young, not too old to learn.
Hmm.
But a lot of stores in America say they are organic stores. But I believe in the Caribbean, that's where you can get organic stuff.
Yep.
You know, because you get the organic egg, you get the spice, you get the nutmeg, you know, you get the chocolate, the cocoa, cacao, how you call it. Well, I'm a Dominican, so I'm a Dominic.
Say, boy.
You know? But what I'm trying to say, I don't think that America have any organic like the Caribbean. I don't think so. And I will never think so. We in the Caribbean, we have our organic, but you know, the people and them, they're not studying about to raise the fowl in the backyard no more. They prefer to go to the restaurant, to the supermarket and buy a box of egg, 2 box of egg. You know? And that is all those things that killing us slowly. Because those eggs, they give those eggs were incubated eggs. incubated.
Yep.
Those local backyard fowl we had there. You know how long we have those fowls? Me and you and all on the panel born and meet those fowls there.
Amen.
And we prefer to go and buy a whole fowl in the supermarket than we kill one of those local fowl in our backyard.
Yes, excellent point, Colin.
And one more thing I have to say. As I say, I love the panel, and I have a lot of things to say, but locally, in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, all Dominicans had a backyard. Me and all. Down Saint-Sauveur, I'm from Saint-Sauveur down there. And we had our backyard and everything going on. You know, but people don't watch that nowadays. They prefer to go to the market and buy 2 carrots, buy a cabbage, buy this. You can do your own backyard garden, which will be much healthier to you than going to the supermarket and buying a pack of carrots. That carrot there in a plastic, you don't even know how long it in the plastic. You don't know how far it come from. You know? You have a tomato there, right there. You know? Natural.
Yes.
You know, we think going to the supermarket is natural. That's not natural. Our backyard is more natural. Anyway, thanks for hearing my voice, and bless the panel, and good night.
Yes, good night. Yes.
From a distance from the Bronx.
Yes, thank you for calling, and thank you for your excellent contribution. Some really good points that you're making this evening. And Amma, I want to come back to you for the rest of your thoughts. But we also have to look at the fact that all these apartment buildings are coming up. So where are Dominicans supposed to do this backyard gardening and raise the fowls and get the eggs from the fowls? Because as we can see, a lot of people are now living in apartment buildings. So any thoughts on that?
So going back to the legislation, I just wanted to wrap that up.
Yes.
I feel that we have the power within ourselves to change that narrative. Going to the apartment building situation, it's so funny that you brought that up, because I was doing some research in the last 2 weeks, and I forgot the exact scientists that did the research, but what they did when they designed the inner cities of America, they had experiments where they put rats in layers, in levels, in multi-level buildings, and there were several social conditioning variables that went into those experiments, and the experiments yielded a certain results in terms of people and their behavior psychologically, and their belief system in terms of health, and their level of empowerment in terms of what they could and could not do for themselves. So what they saw in the rats is that even when you took them out of there and you gave them open space in which they could now function, they still wanted to go back into those cave-like buildings that were layered. And they showed in the experiment how they had them set up. And it's very, very daunting that we are introducing a system like that in Dominica, and there's no need for it. I'm not against housing, but I do say that if you're going to build housing for people, everybody needs to have their own little individual plot. Look, I grew up, Marigot had one housing scheme. My mom had a house in it. Behind it, we have a thriving backyard. I moved from Marigot. I went to Roseau. I lived in RBC housing scheme at the river on the lower half. That's where I spent another 2 to 3 years in town. My aunt had a backyard, and we had things. We had mangoes. We had certain things growing in our backyard. So I feel like it's very terrible that we are going down that lane because it puts us further and further away from the land. But as with everything, I always like to say these things should not be what drives us. We have to take the responsibility for ourselves, regardless of the situation that we've been put in. If you don't have housing and the government gives you an apartment, take the apartment. But also don't lose contact with where your family land is. You have a piece of you live in town, you're from the countryside. I know a lot of people in Marigot that live in Roseau, and on the weekend, as on Friday night, you cannot get space on a bus to go up country because everybody returns to their village of origin because Saturday morning, bright and early, is in the bush we used to go.
Mhm.
In the bush, we would go to the family land for our produce.
Yes, excellent point. I think we had a call coming in. Is that still with us, Lambi?
Yeah, let's try. Call, are you still there?
Yes, good evening. Good
Good
evening, young
evening.
one.
Good evening.
Right, this, yes, particularly, good night. Don't get jealous. There's a reason why I'm shouting out separately. I've been listening to the program, and earlier on, Ms. Thomas made some very critical things that I don't hear it being expanded. One is the question of trading, and two is the question of the quality and quantity that we can provide.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of trading, we notice that on the ascension of the Dominica Labour Party to power in Dominica, then their focus has been on aid rather than on trade. So they have not developed any trade agreements in particular with any serious country. In fact, the little trades we used to do with Antigua and these, we've lost them to since. We don't understand that the government aid because it is less accountability. If you have trade, the average person getting involved in the food, eat and eat what they produce. I remember prior to the office, we used to export peppers, we used to export passion fruit, and lots of root crops, because there were trade agreements for you to get from the United States. They trade standard measures. You would need to go to Jamaica and find out.
Yeah, Lambi, I think he's cutting off and cutting in. He might have to call back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so please call back if you can. But let me go over to Bushman and Jodi for any thoughts you would like to share at this point. Jodi?
Yeah, I just want to add that we've been doing a lot, and I think there are actually individual businesses here on island that have the model and that we maybe just need to capitalize on and see how we can get the other businesses on board. So we have a lot of educating to do, and just making people aware of what they need to do in businesses to get their products out there, because it feels like we're sort of in a bubble and the rest of the world is out there in a glass bubble. We can see what's going on. We know that we can help them, but like our hands are tied. So I think we have a lot of work, a lot of groundwork to do. Even when Emma talked about, I think it was Emma or Bushman talked about having acreages of land for herbs. And they're so the processes are not very intensive. I mean, you have the sun that dries our herbs for us, so it's just to grow them, pick them, and let the sun do the work, and then package. So, and it's such a billion-dollar industry that we're not even aware of, you know. So I think this is where education comes in, and letting our young people know that there are businesses besides doing accounting or engineering. There's the whole herbal industry, the whole cosmetic industry, that they can tap into, and so education is very important. And sometimes I put time aside to actually go into the schools to talk to them about eating healthily, using healthy wellness products, growing their little food, because I have friends with children who would have their little garden, their little save and their little parsley, and even learning about how to use the top of the carrots to plant back, and the broccoli and the Chinese cabbage to plant back. So all these things we need to educate our people about. And I think it starts in the schools. So I'm very, very happy when I hear that we have a very good 4-H program. So the 4-H program is actually where the kids get to learn about planting, about plants, how to grow them. And so it's something I see catching on in the primary schools and even in the high schools. So I think there's more that we can do on that front to start in the schools so that they're aware of the harmful nature of most of the stuff that they eat. All the cheese curls and the corn curls and the box strings. Some schools have actually started getting rid of the sodas. So you cannot bring sodas onto the school compound.
Excellent.
You can only use local juices, and they've even gone further to have juices that are not sweetened so much. So minimum sugar and water. That's all that. So I think all the schools should follow that model. And we should start by educating, even in the primary schools, that what we have is sufficient for us. What we have growing on island is sufficient for us. I mean, our export bill compared to what we produce, I mean, it's like chalk and cheese. You can't even compare the two.
Yeah,
So,
and I'm coming to the call if the call is still there, but I think we're already seeing the pieces of the puzzle, right? So we're talking about education, especially at an early age. We're
correct.
talking about awareness. We're talking about information. And most importantly, we're talking about the networks and the collaboration. Because look at this panel, look at the amount of brain power that we have with 3 Dominicans. Imagine what could happen if we included other experts in this area, about 10 more, and we are able to bring that brain power to the table to figure out how first do we create the markets that our caller rightly told us are needed, the importance of trade. How do we first create those markets so that we then are able to produce the herbs, produce everything that is needed to be able to export these products and to feed our own people? Because we talk about the need for bulk, but it's the need for bulk not only to export these important produce, but also for local consumption. Lambi, is the call still there? And then Bushman, we're going to come to you.
Let's see. Caller, you still there?
Yeah, good evening, good evening, good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, Mr. Simone. I really love your program and I
Thank
listen. And
you.
just what you end by saying about we need to look for marketing. But
Yes.
Simone, I don't want to inject politics in your program because it is so timely. When we have water that is, I mean, the world, I in St. Thomas and we drink distilled water a lot of time. We don't even know where the water comes from, you know? And for you to see the amount of water we have flowing to the sea, and you're watching me and tell me we have a government in power for 23 years, watching us today and tell us they cannot export water. People don't want to buy our water. Dominica is part of CARICOM. 6 million people in the CARICOM region. We cannot get MAC for our water. That just showing you when come to marketing Dominica products, this government have no form of expertise. And that's why we're losing money. When you talk about basilic, Simier quarter, these are light products we should get on a plane and get to anywhere part of the world. But because of how the government, think of it, we have coconut in Dominica.
Mm-hmm.
When we would have a prime minister that encouraging agriculture, he looked down on a farmer that producing coconut water for a living and say, what does he can do? What can he do for you? What coconut man can do for you? What can he do? So when you think of a level of conversation like that, he's not just looking down on coconut man, he's looking down on agriculture, or he's looking down on the very same thing that can give us long life, long health, fresh food to eat. So we're saying before all these things have to take place, the conversation in the top have to change and have to show a little more appreciation for agriculture, for what Dominica can produce and export, for a better living for the farmers and everybody else. God bless Dominica. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, caller. Excellent, excellent, excellent point. Thank you so much for calling and sharing. Bushman, let me come over to you for your thoughts.
But just to expound on what the last caller just talked about, and he mentioned coconut, and Emma went into more details earlier about coconut and the use of the entire plant. And one of the key points I think I don't hear a lot of, or even enough of, is that the young coconut, the young jelly, before it starts making jelly inside, just the water, that is the best eye wash ever. The best eye wash. And Glenda Shillingford, you were probably still on board.
Yeah, she's there.
One of my lives, you did ask about, floaters in your eyes. And that's one of the things, one of the key ingredients that could get rid of your floaters for you. Young jelly, fresh from the tree, get the water and wash your eyes with that. That thing is so amazing. But and to touch on some of the other points previous callers made, I do really want to touch on a point. I believe it was from the first caller. He said that America does not, or he does not believe America has organic foods. That is not 100% correct. You have to remember something. America imports a lot of food. A lot of food. America imports most of its foods. And the thing is that America does import organic foods. The availability of the organic foods to the general population may be an issue, but America does have organic foods. All right. So we have to make this clear. It's not 100% correct to say that there is no organic foods here. Okay. Now, on the other point of everybody should have a backyard garden. Yeah, but realistically, we know that is not going to happen. It should be, but it's not. Everyone doesn't have the skill set of growing foods. Somebody has to be the farmer. Somebody has to be the plumber. Somebody has to be the mechanic. Someone has to make clothes. See where this is going? So everyone cannot plant. Okay? Everyone doesn't know how to do it. And so the question becomes, we have farmers and we have other skilled men and women, right? So the farmers provide the foods. The farmer could go to the market, or the mechanic or the carpenter or the mason could come to the farmer's home or the garden and purchase the food or exchange services. Hey, I have a plumbing problem. You can fix it for me, and I will provide you with food, good organic grown food. See where this is going? So everyone cannot be a farmer. We need to get that clear. Some of us have to do other things, and some of us have to be farmers. So we have to support each other. Farmers have to support the mechanics, have to support the carpenters, the architects, the lawyers, the person who has to stay behind the cash register and ring up that local egg and ring up that local carrot and that local cabbage and that local celery and that basilic and that semicotuan and the neem and the kako and everything else, the toloma. Somebody has to be behind the cash register to ring that up. Okay? And so it is. That's just a big circle, life circle.
Yeah, but I see your point, Bushman, and I think those are important points. But to Emma's point, I think it is also important to have community gardens because there is a lot we can accomplish with community gardens. Yes, we can have the expert farmer who has the skills and the talents for farming, but there's room for other hands, right?
Mhm.
Especially when it comes to the younger children, getting them involved, as Jodi talked about, educating them at an early age, getting their hands dirty, get them used to the soil so that they too can become a part of the community gardens and the important roles that community gardens play in terms of bringing communities together. Because now I'm hearing in Dominica, we have neighbors that don't even talk to each other, right? They are divided on political lines, religious lines, whatever lines we can find, we are divided. So the role of the community garden, yes, Bushman, having that skilled farmer, but also having that skilled farmer teaching the importance of that community garden or even an urban garden where it's not in the countryside, like Amma said, but it is in town. Somewhere in town, somebody has a big enough yard. You create an urban garden, and there's so many life lessons that our young children can learn from being a part of an urban garden, a community garden, and just learning those skills on how do I
I agree. I think we lost you, Simone.
I think she just to touch a bit on what she was saying, and Bushman, I agree with what you're saying to an extent too as well, because we have it where we need certain people to take key roles in stimulating the economy in terms of driving trade and economic activity.
am I
So
back, guys?
yes, you're
Yes,
back.
go
Sorry.
ahead. Thank you for holding down the fort. Go ahead.
Yes. So we were talking about the point Bushman made. I think what he was driving at is if we each have individual roles and we
Yes.
contribute to the economic activity, those
Mhm.
are drivers of an economy. And basically, it stimulates economic activity, it stimulates trade, and it stimulates the private sector, and it causes people like Jodi, who has her own product line, to be able to produce. But I think fundamentally, I agree with Simone that on a fundamental level, everybody should have a backyard. And I'm not saying everybody should grow everything. I grew up again in Boxing Shed, Marigot. It was a little housing scheme. And there were times when my mom, we never grew yams and dashing and those things. We grew like maybe vegetables. But our neighbor next door, whenever he had yams and vegetables, he would give us. And then we had another guy that would go diving and bring fish, and we would trade. So back to the point, Simone, of when what we're talking about, which is the point of the discussion, which is how do we survive in times of hardship. Those are the things that we need to look at. How do we trade our goods and services with each other? Fish for my vegetables, thank you, I got fish now. The other person bringing tubers, somebody may bring citrus, and we trade with each other. Other things that we can do is for example, seeds. Seeds is a big topic that we haven't gotten to. Saving seeds for times of hardship. We don't know where the world is going. The world seems to be on this tangent, not just Dominica, very bad tangent as to food scarcity. We're not guaranteed to have food in the future. So we need to talk about seed saving and seed libraries. So those are some of the areas that I have been like really passionate about. We need to know how to compost. So, for example, how do you take scrappings from your garden and compost them? Learning how to have a couple animals in our yard where we can even get biogas from it. We have not touched on stuff like that. We're talking about hardship. If you have surplus. So if we're in a season of surplus, bagging your food and saving it for the next season when you don't have. I remember going to Dominica when my kids were there, and I'd go in the market and buy like $50 worth of passion fruit, and I would bag them for my mom, and I'd buy fish and I'd bag them. And she would, 3 months later, she's like, I'm now using the last of this. So those are like tricks that we can use on managing what we have, using our seeds, sharing seedlings. I talked about the tomato. You have 100 seedlings. I don't need 100 tomato seedlings. So here, my neighbor, you can have five, and five will give you all the tomato that your family needs for 2 to 3 months. And there's something else that you can give me. Canning, we can also learn how to can our surplus and put there for, dry days. And bottling is also another method of preservation. And back to Jodi again with her product line. I mean, I remember using hibiscus to wash my hair as a child. My grandmother was from Grand Bay, and she was like Pat's Carib. And let me tell you, you could not touch her hair with anything but aloe or hibiscus. She wouldn't let you wash her hair. And so we learned from a very young age of what we should do, and we have that knowledge, like Bushman is saying. But what we don't have right now is awareness. This culture, this who we have right now, there's an a awareness that is lacking. And I think by having conversations like this, we can bring more awareness to the public.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Very important points. And it goes beyond just the conversation this evening, because I truly hope that we can get this program off the ground. Jody's gonna be the host, right? Jody, say yes. And we have so much more to cover, because when we look at the role of stress and what we eat, when we look at people not being able to pay their bills, I know Uncle Sam hit Amma with a huge bill today. She was crying on Facebook. So when we look at all the other rising prices and the stress that creates for all of us and how it impacts the food that we eat. So there's so many different angles for that conversation. I also know that you're on a diet of sugar. So we have to talk about sugar addiction, how we are so addicted to sugar and the implications of that. So, hey, Lennon, thank you. He says, great show. Thank you for the message. Lennon Matthew, frequent caller to Q95. Great to see you on board. Yes, so there is so much more to cover: food insecurity, the important role of community gardens, even beyond simply growing the food, the way community garden can bring people together. I had a young man called Kofi Thomas. His parents are from Dominica. He made it all the way to the Ellen DeGeneres show because he created a community garden in Brooklyn. And he talked about how that garden was able to do so much more than he envisioned. It was able not only to feed people for free, but it was able to give young people a space to create, to share their poetry, to share their music, to talk about their concerns. People from, the blue gangs and red gangs and all the other gangs, they were able to come together because of the commonality of that community garden. So we have a lot to talk about. I really hope we can get this new program off the ground, and we have the advisors for that new program. We're looking at them right now. So Bushman, Amma, Jody, I'm already recruiting you guys. So I think we did a good job of talking about everything we wanted to talk about this evening. Of course, there's a lot more to talk about, but Jody, let me just come to you for your final thoughts as we wrap up.
Sure. So I really enjoyed this discuss tonight. It touches home for me because I grew up with that inkling. My dad always, I could not bring a Coke in the house. We did not use anything that was like Bohio and cubes. We ate natural. All our seasoning was natural. Our juices. We ate everything that we grew. I think we just need to just rewind. we're advancing in technology. Look, we have all this AI stuff, but I think for our self-preservation and self-sufficiency, we need to rewind time maybe 30, 40 years down the line when our grandparents had the formula for how we should live healthily. You know, we're more educated, yes, but they knew what to do and how we should eat and how we should live. So just if we grow our own food and we become self-sufficient, growing our own food is like printing your own money, you know. It's like printing your own money. You know what you're putting in, and you know what it's going to give you in return. So I think awareness, that word has been spoken many times this evening, but I think that is key in letting people know the effects of what we eat, how it affects us, how it affects our lifespan. I mean, we want to be there for our children. I want to see my grandchildren, and just living a life that we can help each other too. So if I grow my food and I have surplus, like Emma said, I can share with my neighbor and vice versa. So even that whole kudme thinking that we had back in the days, like I said, we just need to rewind back to 30 years ago. That whole kudme thinking that we grew up on could be used to make the whole nation wealthy and healthy. You know, our health is our wealth. When I say wealthy, that's what I mean. You know, and so I'm walking around sometimes in town and just looking at the young kids, and they're so big. Like a lot of children, like growing up my age, you maybe just find one or two, you know, maybe heavy on the heavy side. But now there are so many children who have asthma and who have all these different illnesses, eczema, that is so rampant now. And it has to do with what we eat and with what we put on our skin. So we really need to understand how what we eat, what we grow, the things that we buy, how that affects our life, how that affects a nation, how that affects the productivity of an entire nation. And so we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to get brains like Mapampo and maybe preserve them. I don't know what we need to do, but we need to go back to that thinking that what we eat and what we grow is more important than. And some people have that thinking that food outside is better than here. You know, we have that sort of mentality that
Yes.
the foreign products are better than our own. And so we really, really need to re-educate. We need to unlearn some of the things that we've learned and to re-educate and start from young. And I think
Yes.
if we start to do that, then we're well on our way to creating a healthy nation and creating a model for other countries to follow on. Because we have everything here. We have the blueprint. We just have to print it and share it. So
Yeah, yeah.
those are my final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jodi. And I'll be sending you a message so we can start that first meeting to have that discussion. Hopefully, you have some time, maybe even tomorrow,
Sure.
so we can get this off the ground. So,
Sure.
again, thank you, everyone, for being here. We had a nurse and founder of Dominica Garden Club, Miss Halima Thomas, Indigenous Bushman Urban Things. We had Jodi Dublin, president of DHBA, Dominical Herb Association, as well as the proprietor of JD's Naturals. So we want to thank everyone who joined us for this conversation on as food prices continue to rise, how can we still improve and maintain a healthy lifestyle to potentially avoid NCDs such as cancer, diabetes, strokes, heart disease. And let's face it, a lot of Dominicans are even afraid to go to the hospital. So I think that is even more reason for us to take care of ourselves. When we heard that episode with Matt yesterday on the block and the examples that were coming in with regards to the hospital, it is even more reasons for us to take care of ourselves so we can avoid the fear and trepidation that comes with potentially being hospitalized. So I think we have many reasons to take care of ourselves, the energy level to be able to live a full life. So there's still so much more we have to continue discussing. And we want to thank our callers who called in. We want to thank everyone who posted a comment on Q95 FM Radio on Facebook, and Push Past 10, Glenda Shillingford, Alvin Thomas, Anthony Simon, my mom, Medina Senhouse, Lynn Peters. Great to see you guys, and thank you so much for your contribution to the conversation. Let's see, Lennon Matthew tells us an idea to incorporate all these organic products is in our cooking. I only found out when I got to the US that you can use ginger and basil in food. So there is room for having some cooking classes. Amma and Bushman, you guys are cooking on Facebook Live? So there is room for so much more that we can do with this topic as we continue to look for new and innovative ways. So it's all about, the collaboration, the networks, and just creating those opportunities for us to live a better life. So I want to thank everyone who joined us, Mr. G, the Q95 FM radio family, Lambi. Thank you for taking the calls, showing. And DJ Shan in the background, thank you for being here. Bushman, did you want to add something real quick before we sign off?
Yeah, just real quick. Am I unmuted?
No, you're good.
I'm good. I would really like to encourage everyone who's listening to the show live, and everyone who will listen to it on the rewind. Cook more at home. Get in your kitchen, man, and cook. Go get some fresh vegetables, okay, and just cook more at home. I did some research on some pricing, and for a single person going to a restaurant, a really nice plush restaurant, and having one meal, right? The amount of money they would pay, including tips, of course, for that one meal could feed a whole family if they would just buy the food and cook it at home, and you know what's going into it. And one thing I've observed is that, say for instance, like me, I go to a restaurant and I may tell the waiter, hey, I need my food cooked with olive oil, right? And they say, yeah, sure, we cook it with olive oil, but the amount of olive oil in there may be just a minute amount. See, they didn't lie, but still they didn't tell me the entire truth. So that's the point. Cook at home. If you cook at home more, you will be more conscious and aware of what goes into your pot, and in turn goes into your gut. Okay, so that's my closing point for you.
Yeah, anything else you wanted to chime in real quick?
No, not really. I'm gonna follow up on my Facebook on Dominica Garden
Yes.
Club. I had some more points that I wanted to make in terms of how to really cut back on the cost of food. I'll probably do a live on that there. And then if you want, I really would love to do a talk with you on cancer. Bushman and I probably can come back to do that. Cancer is really a big problem in Dominica.
Yes, and please keep all your notes. Keep all your notes from this evening's conversation, because those will be very important as we move forward with potentially that new program. So again, you've been listening to Roots Connections on Q right here on Q95, the big station. I am Simone Mathieu, and of course, we are continuing our collaborations, our networks, and the important tools that we need to move our people and our country and our region forward. So for more information of how we are doing everything that we do, including Diaspora for Good is coming along very nicely. We are also working on some important ebooks. We are also working with the Be More Mentorship Foundation. So we have so much going on that everyone can get involved in, so that we can take this beyond these important conversations and take this into the action realm of how we can assist our people everywhere in the world. And I like how Bushman said it. It comes down to trust. We have to learn to trust each other so that we can work together so everyone can benefit. So again, thank you to the panel. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our listeners, our viewers, and everyone who made a significant contribution to this program. We will be back in 2 weeks. I believe it should be April 26th for another episode of Roots Connections on Q. Until then, you have yourself a productive rest of the week, a good night's rest, and take care until we meet again in 2 weeks. Everyone, unmute your mic and say bye to the people.
Have a
Thank you,
good
guys.
evening.
Thank you,
Thanks for showing up,
Lambi.
guys. See you next
All
time.
right, so
Bye.
we'll follow up
Bye.
soon. All right, take care. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Joe Rastafari. Home, oh, oh, children, home. Wanna go home, oh, yes, children, home. Got to go, yeah. We've been trodden from tendencies right on through revelation. We've been a subject to master's feet. So bliss, so we wanna go. Yeah, we are a people enslaved and sold, scattered through the earth. Jacob is calling his children 12 tribes, so we want go. Oh, children, home, oh, to Zion, oh, wanna go, take me there, home, oh, to Zion, oh, wanna go, yeah. We've been trodden from Genesis right on through Revelation. We've been a subject to master's feet. So bliss, so we wanna go. Oh, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah and Zebulun, Isaac, God and Asher, Naphtali, Joseph and Benjamin, 12 tribes, so we want go. Oh, children, home, oh, to Zion, oh, I wanna go. Oh, children, home, oh, take me home, oh, I wanna go, yeah. Oh, children, home, oh, oh, children, home, I wanna go, said I'm longing to, oh, to Zion, oh, I wanna go, so here I say, yeah. Africa for Africans, a home and a brother, so I must go home. Yeah, what that lay, what that lay. Tell me how you feeling, what that lay. Tell me how you feeling, what that. Are you feeling irie, what that lay? Are you feeling hopeful, what that lay? Are you feeling irie, what? Are you feeling what that lay?
He don't really care at this point. Everybody that loved me is either dead or going to be dead. Because we were living a very dangerous life. There's times when we get stuck up by other narco dudes. Me and my sister Ashley were like, yo, we need to get out of here or we're not gonna make it.
After 3 years in Mexico, your dad tells you and Ashley that it's time to pack your bags once again and to go back home, to go back to the States.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
What happens?
Look, as I say, just like
vacation.
Just like it was a vacation to get to Los Angeles, and then it was supposed to be a vacation to go to Mexico. Oh, we're only just going for a vacation. From Mexico, we're gonna go on a vacation to America.
But by this point, you must know that it's not going to be a vacation. You know not to trust the word vacation.
I don't even know at this point.
Vacation or not, Blair and his sister were told they would spend the summer with their stepmom Angel at her new place in New Jersey.
I felt like I was a foreigner coming into America for the first time. Even like the getting through the border and all that stuff was very sketchy, but we luckily got through there and everything was like different and new.
After years on the run, living under fake names and assumed identities, Blair had to prove that he was actually an American citizen, that he was actually Blair Cobbs. He was 18 now, a legal adult, and he split his time between government offices and boxing gyms in New York City, just across the water from his stepmom's place in New Jersey. Blair was just finding his new rhythm when he started getting phone calls asking about his dad.
When somebody asks for that man, it's usually something bad happened. My stepmom at the time, Angel, is going through a lot. And me personally, I'm thinking, he's probably dead.
Eventually, the law did catch up with your dad.
Yes.
How did you find out that he had been arrested?
The news. The news is how we found out.
What were they showing on the news about your dad?
Well, they showed like ID pictures and I don't know, like, oh, he did this and that. And like, honestly, when I saw it, I felt a big state of relief, honestly. And the state of relief came from the fact that like, okay, well, he's still alive. He's still alive.
Yeah.
He's probably going to be in jail for the rest of his life, but he's still alive.
But with Eugene Cobb's arrest, Blair's situation became more unstable. Things got so bad, Blair even stopped training.
Obviously, my father was a big support financially for like my stepmom. My stepmom can't stand me. It forever haunted me, the position of the redheaded stepchild. But like she was willing to help out, you know what I mean, for that time period. But once my father got like taken or whatever, the worst thing could happen.
Like these last few years, everything that had happened, your dad ending up in Mexico, you and your sister having to go on the run to Mexico, then him getting arrested, it being all over the news, like it's all just seems so surreal. You also lost your identity in the midst of it. How are you processing all of this?
I think I'm gonna be honest with you. The only way that I even process all of this stuff is through insanity. For me, I have a coping mechanism, which is like this Blair the Flair character. I can go to the boxing gym. I can live out this fantasy. I can kind of like focus on just the basic necessities of life, which is really just survival. I remember a friend is telling me, and this is like really recently, And he tells me about how if you ever see a speedboat like racing, speeding at over 150 miles per hour in water, and they're literally just teeter-tottering on the brink of death because a little bit this way, all gone. A little bit that way, all gone. Just a gust of wind, they flying in the air. If the engine so much as like just misfire once, they're in flames. And that's kind of like how I lived my life.
Yeah.
That's me. And what better crazy profession than literally getting into a boxing ring that guarantees you sooner or later you're going to get hurt. So that's how I coped.
You wore out your welcome at your stepmom's house by this point, right? And you had to leave. You moved to Philadelphia. You actually moved into your grandma's old house, which was semi-abandoned. What was life like in those days in Philadelphia?
It was incredibly difficult. I can remember it being a full-time job to get a job. I couldn't get one first. I couldn't get one without having some kind of like job history. Because even on my resume, it would never make sense. Like you went to Beverly Hills High School and now you're here. You don't even look real. Get out of here. Like, you know what I mean?
It wasn't a very safe city either, was it?
No, I went through a lot of turmoil, a lot of dangerous situations. That house that I was living in, like at the time started, like it was abandoned. So like
Is this your grandmother's old house?
Yes. Some of these like family members that have tried to turn into a crack house. So like I'm literally living in a crack house and like that's abandoned and just trying to like get my life together. And I can remember like being on like the floor in the middle of wintertime in the freezing cold. There is no heat. The only heat is just me. Like, you know, I don't know if I'm going to make it.
But one particularly frosty night, after months of living in these squalid and miserable conditions, something changed for Blair.
I can remember a presence that you couldn't see, you couldn't smell, but you can feel. I remember a voice calling out to me that I couldn't hear, but I could feel it. I 100% believe that was God that spoke to me. And he told me to pick up the pieces, the shattered pieces of your life off of this cold wooden floor. It's much more work to be done. Now I got up off of that wooden floor, and it became one of the things that forever changed my life.
Because you hadn't been religious before this.
No, I'm definitely not religious at the time.
So Blair picks himself up. He finds a new gym and throws himself into a training routine. He even starts to book fights, but money's still tight.
For a lot of tournaments, like I didn't have anything to eat, or like I'm living in a car because I can't really afford to go back and forth from the gym to the tournament to the house because it's all in different parts of the city of Philadelphia. And it was very hard for me to like gain the resources that was necessary to be actually successful.
In the meantime, you meet your first real girlfriend, right? You meet Melissa. Can you tell me about her? How did you guys meet?
Oh man. So I meet Melissa. She was everything for me. She was the only thing stable in my life. Like, so it was one summer where they were having the 4th of July fireworks show. And I think this was like one of the first years I was in Philadelphia. You know what I mean? I survived a horrible winter and now it's summertime. I'm alone. There was a concert show. I saw a banner for the 4th of July. The Goo Goo Dolls was playing. I'm a big fan of the Goo Goo Dolls. So I went out there by myself to go see the Goo Goo Dolls. I go home, and on the way home, when I'm in the subway, I meet Melissa. I was actually trying to talk to the young lady that was next to her, and I was talking to her, and then I think I asked her age or something. I'm like, oh, you're too young. And then I just like literally like just hopped up to the next person That next person was Melissa. So we were talking and everything. She's like, I'm telling her all of these crazy things of like my past. And like, she's like, you are stupid. You definitely a liar, one. And two, you're very, very interesting and you definitely look weird. Because at the time I'm trying to lose weight. I'm losing weight for boxing. I'm trying to lose a lot of muscle mass that I accumulated.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like I'm training extremely hard and I'm not eating. So I'm like pale and I look bony in these oversized clothes. Like, you know.
After that meeting, you and Melissa, you fall in love, right?
Yeah. And this is the crazy part. My father met my mother the exact same way. I didn't find out that until recently, actually.
On the subway?
Yeah. My father met my mother on the subway, on the train, on the way back home from the 4th of July fireworks show.
What? That's crazy.
My father met my mother the exact same way. The exact same way on the exact same train.
But you and Melissa, you have this beautiful love story, bit of a whirlwind. And pretty soon you two have a son together. What was it like becoming a father yourself? You know, did it shift your focus at all? Did it make you think about your own relationship with your father?
I'm just so excited to just have him in my life. It changed a lot of things. It changed my perspective on like what's important. Cause then it stopped being about me. It wasn't about me. It was about my son. But then it dawned on me, I can't really change my son's life without changing other people's lives. I can't change like their circumstances truly until I change the circumstances altogether. And that's when like this thought process came about in my mind that like my real passion, my real purpose is to make sure that like this craziness that Philadelphia is better. You know what it did? It solidified my existence.
Mm-hmm.
Like I actually exist on this planet. Because I was still in disbelief. This is probably all just a dream. Like sometimes I would wake up places and not remember how I got there. But like having my son born, it like put me in a position where as though like I'm actually real.
Becoming a father may have grounded Blair in reality, but his own dad had just made another bid for freedom and his fantasy life back in Mexico. On April 10th, 2013, Eugene Cobbs quietly walked away from the minimum security facility he'd been moved to for good behavior and headed straight for the border. It wasn't long after Blair found out that his dad was on the run again that news came he'd been caught and was back in custody. But Blair had his own life to figure out. While he'd fought his first pro match, it wasn't enough just to be good at boxing to make it big. To book the big fights, he needed to know the right people, the right promoters, be in with the right crowd. Blair knew he had to hustle, and he tried everything. He even went to Las Vegas, hoping to schmooze, shake the right hands.
It was a failure. It was not successful. I came back home empty-handed, and I had to face homelessness once more for like a year straight. And it was horrible. I was at my lowest level. Because I have a child and a lady, and they have to go to this place, and I have to be in the streets. I can remember in that time period, we went to this church, and they're changing people's lives. Basically, this is what it looked like. It looked like, remember those movies, right? Where a commercial comes up? And in that commercial is everything that's messed up about that person at that particular time. It's like that. You feeling down on your luck? Are you wearing your shoes on the wrong foot? And the character literally has his shoes on the wrong foot. He just really don't care about his life right now. Is your shirt ripped? And the character's shirt is ripped. Well, You just in luck. We have this. If you call this number, we're gonna fix everything. And I'm just like to a point of the lowest level where it's though like, you know what? I'm down. I will try it. Like if we can find God to fix this, we're gonna do it because I need it. So I end up going to this retreat.
Where is it?
It was in the mountains. So I go up that mountain, and sure enough, I was not the same when I came down from that mountain. I was not the same. And miracles started working upon my life. And I was so happy and full and abundant with joy and like light. It's like almost as if I can walk on clouds.
Blair was full of this new sense of optimism, and he decided to give becoming a pro boxer in Las Vegas one more shot. This time with the whole family in tow, Melissa and their son packed into their beat-up car. Scared of breaking down on the way, they even fueled up with the engine still running. Blair remembers those early days in Vegas fondly. Although they mainly slept in the car, he had plenty of time with his son, and the future seemed full of boundless possibilities. The couple got jobs, an apartment, and sure enough, Blair's boxing career started to click into place. He landed his first big manager, who paid him enough to train full-time.
It's like a dream. It's like a dream come true. I don't have to worry about the rent not being paid, so I can just focus on boxing. Eventually, Golden Boy starts rolling back into the picture. One of the top boxing promoters in the world. So that was a really big deal, just being promoted by that guy. But it was just one miracle at a time. I was the Nevada State Boxing Hall of Fame Prospect of the Year.
He was doing well, but Blair still hadn't won a title. And titles are the main currency in the boxing world. Finally, on March 21st, 2019, he got his chance. Blair's first title fight.
I wake up, it's fight day. I say a whole lot of prayers. A whole lot of prayers. I'm calling upon all the warriors of yesterday's past. I'm calling upon the strength and power of King David himself, Samson. I'm calling upon every great warrior of my past, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Shane Mosley, Sugar Ray Leonard, all these guys, Floyd Mayweather, all the people of my past to grant me this one final time. And every fight seems to be like that one final time. It's always, it feels like that. And it was always like this. It was like once more into the gray to fight the last great fight you'll ever know. Live and die on this day. Live and die on this day. I'm literally teeter-tottering on the brink of death.
Look at that speedboat.
Yeah, as far as that speedboat, just that brink of death. Augusta winning, it'll be all over. And like the only thing that can actually like get me to my destination is faith. And then of course, calling upon Blair to Flair. Like, come on, man. Come on, Flair. Come on. Get out of here. Like, I'm definitely going to need you today.
We'll be back in a couple of minutes for Blair the Flair's moment in the ring and hitting the big time after the news.
This is the BBC World Service, looking into how Indian workers in the Silicon Valley are facing caste discrimination.
Reaching the top of the US tech industry is no easy path. Indian Americans are a success story.
An elite club of Indian business people now run some of the world's biggest corporations.
But some workers from the most oppressed castes, Dalits, say they face discrimination from colleagues from more privileged caste backgrounds.
Those prejudices are coming along with the Indians too here.
And it's not unheard of for workers outed as Dalits to find themselves on a plane back to India.
Even though I was attacking the caste system, they thought it as an attack on India. I think it was less than 4 to 6 weeks when he informed me that I have to go back to India.
Join me as I travel throughout this area to investigate what exactly is caste and caste discrimination.
The Hidden Caste Codes of Silicon Valley, Tuesday at 8:30 and 19 GMT.
After falling on hard times once again, American boxer Blair Cobbs had one chance at his final lucky break. A lot was at stake. He needed the flair.
Highway of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Ladies and gentlemen, Blair the Flair Cobbs.
I put on a big performance with drama.
The finale of Blair the Flair's story, coming up on Outlook.
BBC News with Neil Nunes. Japan's government has withdrawn an emergency alert telling millions of people to take cover from a missile launched by North Korea. Residents of the northern island of Hokkaido were sent an evacuation order, but the missile never reached Japanese territory. Pyongyang has recently stepped up weapons tests. A second black Democratic politician in Tennessee has been allowed back into the U.S. state's House of Representatives a week after being kicked out